the Evolution Security Podcast. Hey everyone, this is the Evolution Security Podcast. Thanks for joining us. We have another awesome episode. I do this week, for one thing, I'm not on dial-up anymore. I limped on that until last week and finally gave in and bumped it on up a few megabytes. So we shouldn't drop off a video here, but I also have my twin bro on here with me, Eric Davis. How you doing, brother?
Man, wonderful. I apologize, guys. I had to postpone yesterday. I honestly, I came down with a damn back injury. A lot of folks may know it, but some don't. But I tweaked my back again about a month ago, and it had been kind of coming for a while. Like I'd had some sciatic pain for probably about 6 months, and I finally went in and had a MRI, and it showed a impingement in my L3, L4, and it showed that it was pinching the L3 nerve root. Well, that was just irritating me at that point. I went to the combative summit, as a lot of folks know, and I trained my ass off, and I also had been training really hard at that point. But anyway, of all things, I was doing some cardio and was getting off my Echo bike. And as I stepped out, I felt a twinge in my back. I'm like, man, that wasn't my vertebrae adjusting. That was something else. And within 48 hours, man, I was seized up and had a work trip to Florida. And next thing I know, man, I had been in excruciating pain at times. So, yeah, I had injections yesterday, or a injection yesterday. And I can tell you guys, they say it shouldn't help, but for about, up to 14 days, but I already feel a ton better. So, but it had me speaking funky yesterday. I guess some of the meds and, it kind of, I was like, man, I can't do that. My wife's like, you're not going to want to record like that. So sorry for the long.
That's what you get for doing cardio.
And what's funny is it's cardio. And when I do cardio 2.0 or road work 2.0 that Joel Jameson, I think we've talked about that before. Mm-hmm. So my cardio includes, strength movements at times too, kettlebells and all that. So I'm skipping around machines, keeping myself from getting bored. And, I do it to support, my jiu-jitsu and my other activities. But yeah, it's like of all things, I'm getting off my Echo bike and pop, Yeah. So I'm just believing that this is going to be what I really needed to get over this hump to where I can really drive my back strengthening again, deadlifting heavier again, and back on track. Because most important thing to me is jiu-jitsu, being on the mats, So, but man, I blabbered on way too long. So, Sherman, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm excellent. Thanks for having me, fellas.
Well, Sherman, real quick, buddy, we've had you on before, and we'll put your previous show or shows in the show notes. But go ahead and give our audience, for folks that may not know you, a quick bio.
Okay, so I'm currently a general special needs and hospital dentist in Western Washington State. I recently relocated here after being gone for about 18 years. And prior to being a dentist, I was a first responder in both fire, EMS, and law enforcement. And actually, just up until this last May, I was still a reserve police officer in Tennessee before I resigned my commission when I left. And then I did that for 6 years. And then I was also worked on an armored truck. So that was my initial exposure to the tactical use of firearms in extremist situations. And I did that from the time like 2 months after I turned 21 up until I was 30. So several years. And um, let's see, I have undergraduate degrees in law enforcement, cell biology, metaphysics and epistemology, which is a degree, or which is a division of philosophy, forensic odontology, which is the forensic science that deals with the identification of human remains from dental records. And God, what else? Yeah, I think that's about it. Oh, I mean, I did a
Is that
residency.
all?
So
Is that all the degrees you have, Sherman? Oh,
Damn.
it's been a long day. There might be something else I'm forgetting, but that's good for now.
Well, but you know what you also do is you post nasty, bloody teeth pulled out of people's mouths on Instagram, and it makes me
well, you know, it's
barf every time I
have
see
you
it.
noticed I haven't done it in a while?
I haven't. It seems like it wasn't too long ago.
It has been a while, buddy.
Well, you know why? Because Instagram censored me.
Oh, really?
But because a couple people complained, and so it
was me.
it wasn't you. You wouldn't do that.
No.
It kind of irks me though, because I thought, like, if you know me, like, this is kind of what I do, you know, and so I had this game going for a while that I thought was really fun, where I don't. I get a vote, but I don't get control on the music that's in the office that I work in, because my vote counts for two, but I still get outvoted by 16 other people or whatever it is. I lived in Nashville for 18 years. I'm over country music, and bro country. I don't like it. And so what I would do is I would extract the teeth, and then I would take a picture of the teeth for two reasons. One, to post on Instagram, and then I would post a 15 or 30-second snippet of whatever song was on the radio, that particular phrase or those measures, like when I finish the case. And I also do it just for forensic reasons, because occasionally patients will come back and they'll be like, "You didn't get all my tooth out." And I'm like, "Here it is," like, "Yes, I did. And here it is," so, it was a fun game for me that just kind of helped pass the time in between my cases. But some anonymous jerk out there ruined it for me, because they reported me to Instagram for graphic content, and then Instagram sent me a message and said if I posted any more bloody, violent, or graphic content that I would be shut down.
Well, so it is a silly world we live in, because you're doing that for scientific reasons in part, right?
Well, I also think it's funny that, dude, I think I've got, like, I don't know, 250 followers on Instagram or something, and they're all gun bros,
Yeah.
So it's like, if you can't see some bloody wisdom teeth, but you think that you're like, a commando, and you're gonna, like, jump in front of terrorists and save your family, like, what do you think's gonna transpire when the lead or the blades start to fly?
Well, Sherman, we have had some it is funny you mentioned that the number of followers that that we have on some of our social media, it's weird, as many thousands of downloads as we get. We don't care about that, frankly.
Yeah.
And part of it is we are in a niche market, right?
Sure.
And I would say that what you post is niche as well.
Oh yeah.
but it is weird. Everywhere we go, we run into people that are listeners of our show. Isn't that right, Alan? Every single place we go
It's
now,
wild.
it's crazy.
Well, I mean, like I like being in a niche market. And, I think that,
Mm-hmm.
You've come to my class before, both of you. And
Yep.
I mean, I always tell people like, I like being in the dirty corner of the swap meet, right next to the bathrooms. And yes, I
Yep.
know that like 7 out of 10 people that come to my table are going to be looking for the bathroom. But like, it's kind of like Yoda on Dagobah, if you're interested in what I have to teach, you really got to like go out of your way to find me. And I'm okay with that. Like,
Well,
I'm not trying to, be on everybody's mind, and I'm not for everybody. I mean, I know that I'm okay with that. So
The way I look at it, guys, and some people may take this as arrogant, but to me, it's like Eric said earlier, we're going to play jazz. Well,
mhm.
I'll put it this way. Some of the best music, we'll talk about music later. Some of the best music, you're going to go down and see that artist down at a club in front of 50 people.
Sure.
And it's some of the best music you're ever going to see.
Absolutely.
But the point is that I am proud of the guests that we have, the content that we have, the topics that we cover. But frankly, it's not going to get us to Joe Rogan level, because
Yeah.
it's knowledge that people seek out, and I'm pretty proud to say that anytime we run into our audience members, they're pretty serious people about protecting themselves and their families, and pretty serious about learning.
Well, and Aaron, and I'll add to that real quick as we think through that, right? The events that we run into listeners are at events like TACCon,
Mhm.
Combative Summit, range master classes. So yeah, we're, pretty much our audience members are people that self-select into stuff like that,
Mhm.
ECQC, all that. Yep.
Well, I mean, to the lay person or the casual person in the gun community, they see that, like me as a, I don't know if you guys saw that thing where that guy called me a gun influencer, and I was like, do you, bro, do you even know me? Like I'm like not a gun influencer. I don't think you guys are gun influencers, and this certainly isn't a gun podcast. But to the casual observer that just thinks like, oh, these are gun guys and they just sit around and talk about guns all day. I mean, we're not even like, there's nothing analogous to it. I would say like almost like we're like car guys, but only in that like we go, dude, the guy that lives across the street from me has got like a badass, Shelby in his garage that he does nothing with. Like he doesn't do anything with it. When people show me like, oh, I've got this gun and stuff, and then I see how they handle it, I think you've just told me everything that I need to know. Like I'm either going to have to educate you if we're going to have a conversation on this, or I'm just going to have to be very cautious of your lack of safety acumen and be not rude or dismissive, but I kind of got to keep you over on
Yep.
that side of the range because I mean, I'm sure it's happened to you guys too. Invariably, I'll be at the range. I go every week, at least twice a week, and I'll run my target out. People are usually at 5 yards. I'll, run all the way out to 20 or 25 at some point in my practice, shoot some rounds, pull the target in, and my group at 25 is smaller than these other guys at 5, and I'm shooting really fast. And then they'll be like, "Wow, how'd you do that?" And then they end up like grabbing something out of their booth, and you're never sure like if it's going to be pointed at you or if they're, So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that goes on, and I think that even the people that think that they are, truly hobbyists that are into guns, they're not into guns, in the same way that we are. I don't really, I'm not interested in guns. It's probably like you guys are interested in guitars. Like, so what? Like you've got a 1988 like badass like Gibson SG. You got the same one that you got a pearl white one that just like Chris Cornell played on Bad Motorfinger. but can you play it? Like, what can you do with it? Nothing. It's just a piece of wood and some enamel and some strings. Okay. But like, what really interests me is like when somebody shows me like a lever gun that's got no finish on it, or a blued revolver that like the cylinder looks like it's made out of stainless because it's got no finish left on it. That's interesting to me. Like that's something that where I go, oh, this dude's either like drawn this thing 10,000 times or he's literally shot it to where the bluing has unoxidized itself off the gun. That's cool. I want to hear that story. But like, the guys that are, boy, and it seems like a lot of them have CZs, but I don't know. They
And I want a CZ, I think.
Did you?
I do, but
well, I have two. I have two of those P10s. I've got a full size one, and then I've got a P10 compact, and I like them. I think they're great. But,
point is, man, I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't think we didn't even plan to go down this rabbit hole, but it is true. I do want a staccato, which Cecil keeps getting on to me about. Cecil Birch, that is. And then I'm thinking about getting one of those CZ Shadow 2s, the compact. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you the only reason why I want one or both of those pistols, it's because I have 10 Glocks in my safe.
Sure.
And I mainly I've shot a handful of pistols on a regular basis besides Glock. And it's since we have definitely rolled out a lot of our own classes and thank God as I teach classes, it's still, man, you're kind of lucky. Almost everybody shows up with a Glock or Glock compatible,
Yeah.
But that's the main reason. But, something along those lines, right? So that guitar right there, that blue guitar, that's a Cole 8016, and that stands for Aaron Davis. And it's a 16-inch wide body. It's one of a kind, again, from Saul Cole, if I said that already. It took 4.5 years to get here. That's the most expensive thing I've ever bought besides my car and my house. Yeah. And that was with a discount. I say all that to say there's scratches all over the back of that thing from carrying a Glock appendix.
Yeah, you posted a picture of that.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, that's right. I remember it.
I said something like, I saw the back of...
oh, yeah. Actually, that was my telly. But you're right.
Said, what is the guitar and what caused these scratches? And I said it was a Telecaster and then it was caused by your gun or your holster. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
You nailed it, brother.
But you know, I went to, I don't know if you guys have ever been there, but in Nashville, they have the Country Western Museum and Hall of Fame there in downtown. Yeah. And I'm not a country guy, but like, I like that place because it's really more about the origination of country music from like gospel and a
Western
lot of
swing, probably.
I mean, all of that, like Johnny Cash and all of the outlaw country guys, and they have a couple of Johnny Cash's Martins there, and a bunch of his have a lot of really big scratches on the back from I don't know if it was the rhinestones on his jacket or when he was in that phase, or if it was a belt buckle, but there's some big ones. And then they have another Martin that was Willie Nelson's, and that's got a straight up hole, like frayed wood, like you can, opposite of the tone hole, like all the way through the guitar. So I always thought that was kind of cool, but he wouldn't get rid of it. That's his baby.
Well, and right, the point, right? So full circle, what we're talking about is we kind of gone on a tangent, but it's fun. The point is that you can have nice gear, but you still need to practice with it. You still need to use it,
Yeah,
Um,
and I think that like there's a lot of I shoot in a league every week, and it's not an IDPA or outlaw or USPSA or anything like that. It's just like a local league match. I kind of call it like a shooting bowling league. Like you
Yeah.
literally show up. It's 50 rounds if you're shooting pistol. It's 30 rounds if you're shooting revolver, and it lasts the whole season. So there's 4 seasons a year. So it's probably that's like 16, 18 weeks or something like that, or 14. Yeah, 14. That's right. Um, so last season I used a 2-inch Smith & Wesson Model 15, which is a K-frame 38 revolver with adjustable sights. And back in the day, the police officers used to call that like the cheater snub because you could carry it like in plain clothes in detective roles and things, but it still had K-frame adjustable sights on it, so they're really tall. And I shot against a guy you guys know, Rick Remington.
Oh yeah.
And he's won the Rangemaster, Top Gun a few times. He's a phenomenal shooter.
Yep.
And I finished. He used a 4-inch L frame revolver with a red dot, and I think I finished second place to him with a really close gap, maybe like 40
Oh,
or 60
awesome.
points the whole season.
That's
So
awesome, brother.
I had to do some, weird stuff to like tune it in. But again, it was one of those things where, I think unfortunately a lot of people's solution is like blame it on the gun. But I was like, getting into like what Jeff Cooper called, the preoccupation with inconsequential increments, right? So, I'm shooting like an average of like 285 to 290 out of 300 with the revolver. And I had a few couple bad days where I'd shoot a 275 or 276, but never anything off the target and hardly anything outside the 8. But I figured out we were using those dirty bird targets, and the targets can both face, like the Rangemaster ones do, and they can also run and or charge, and then they go from anywhere from 5 to 25 yards. So you don't know how long they're going to face you. You don't know what distance they're going to stop or start from, so they just tell you like shooter, make ready, stand by, and then the action starts. So we're using these dirty bird targets, and the center where your X ring is red. Well, if you've ever shot a factory K-frame revolver before, that insert in the front side is red, and under the crappy indoor lighting of a shooting range,
Yep.
that those reds are the exact same color. So when I put that thing on there, I can see light on either side of the rear sight, but I can't tell where the blade begins and ends. So I did some trial and error. I tried yellow first to repaint the front sight yellow. That didn't work. So then I ended up using like a Kermit the Frog green and over a white primer, and that was the ticket. So unfortunately, I didn't figure that out until there was about like 3 weeks, I think, left in the league or something. But it's all good. I mean, it's all an experiment, and it's all in good fun. I think Rick got first place, and he got a gift certificate, and then I got second place. I think I got $25 gift certificate or something like that. So
Yet you were competing with like-minded people in what sounds like an excellent, just a fun competition. Uh, that's executing marksmanship under pressure.
yeah,
Which
well,
is all we
and
can
I would
really.
I
Yep.
would do it like kind of, I don't know what you guys call it. I call it the hard way. So like I literally get off of work of seeing however many patients, driving straight to the range from the office on my way home, go in there in my work gear, um, and then do the thing. And then no warm up, no dry presses, no finger guns, none of that. Just run it. And I always felt like if the worst I ever do on the worst day of my life is 276 out of 300, that's okay. Um,
Yeah, that's
and,
impressive.
and with a 2-inch revolver out to 75 feet, and still being able to, deliver um, shots, on a 5-inch, that's good.
Yeah, and I would tell you, I can't do that with a revolver, and so I really want to dial in a couple of things. First off, Sherman, and we kind of breezed over a little bit of
Keep going, guys. I'm grabbing the toy.
Your breezed over your bio, and for our audience members out there, Sherman. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Your original blog was Revolver Science, correct?
Yeah.
So again, that speaks to where a lot of your passion was in revolvers, but then you moved into the civilian defender. And for our audience, and Sherman can hit on any of this that he wants, but I'm just trying to give a little bit of praise to Sherman and what he's contributed to the community. But his civilian defender blog and a lot of what you've written out there, Sherman, has influenced a lot of people. And I would tell you a lot of what you've written has inspired a lot of what we do too, Sherman.
Thank you.
And part of that is the whole encompassing civilian defender, the fitness, the jiu-jitsu, the combatives, obviously the medical side, which that's another thing I was to say. Sherman is an expert, subject matter expert in trauma medicine. Some of the best trauma medicine training I've had has been under Sherman. And also, Sherman also used to teach at Tactical Response. Are you still doing some adjunct stuff with them, or?
Yeah, I'm still on the roster. I mean, I still keep in touch with James's daughters. Yeah. So I've told them if they're ever out this direction, I'm glad to help. And then if I ever, I'm sure I will in some point in the future, go back to Tennessee, I'll gladly teach. So.
Well, that's where I first met you, of course. You were one of the instructors in the Tactical Response Fighting Rifle phenomenal class. If folks listening to the audience have been thinking about taking a Tactical Response class, founded by the late, great James Yeager, get out there and take a class. The training out there is incredible. And yes, Sherman was one of the instructors in the Fighting Rifle. And first time I met you, I'm like, this is a dude I can get behind. So I just wanted to put some of that out there. I know we talked about some of that on the first episode we had, but I wanted to throw that out there for folks so they know some of the information you're putting out. You're across the board. You're the full package, brother.
Thank you.
So with that said, Sherman, man, some pretty cool stuff about your pistol league. I kind of thought I was following some of that, but that was way more descriptive. So
yeah, well. So to follow on with your thing, my website was originally called Revolver Science, and then our mutual friend William April said, "Dude, that's 6 people care about that stuff. Change it to something that is marketable and that is going to bring in a wider audience." And I was like, "Yeah, but I like those 6 people." And like I said, I'm not trying to,
I'd rather hang with those 6 people is what you're basically.
It was literally like you guys, Cecil, Craig, Paul, Chris Fry, John Hearn, pretty much everybody Tom Givens that you have on your podcast. Just you, Greg Elfritz, and if he would rebroadcast some of my stuff if he liked it. And so it was that, and it was honest to God. I had I think I had 22 followers for a long time, a couple of years, and then I wrote that article on becoming the civilian defender. Tom republished it in the Rangemaster newsletter, and then it just took off. And then
I'm going to repost that on here. By the way, I'm putting a note.
Sure. Thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
And then William April kind of gave me a shout out in the section that he wrote in the book Straight Talk on Armed Defense that was compiled by Masad Ayub.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he actually
Great book.
used the term civilian defender and cited me. And then after that, he was like, dude, the civilian defender thing, like, is just a perfect descriptor, like develop that. And then that's what I did. And then, yeah, at that time, like, it sounds silly to say, but nobody cared about revolvers. I mean, the revolver renaissance thing has only happened in the last, I'd say, 3 years.
Yeah.
Before people were like, holy smokes, like these things have utility. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times where I'd go to, like a long gun class, like you were talking about, like a tactical response. And I'd go teach a long gun class, and dudes would show up like all jocked out with battle belts and chest rigs and all this kind of stuff. And I'd have on like a pair of cargo shorts, if it was nice, and a polo shirt, some kind of, hiking boot or shoe, and then an appendix carried revolver, a speed strip in my pocket, and then I'd put a rifle mag or shotgun shells in my back pocket.
Yep.
And people would be like, whoa, I've got 8 mags on my chest rig, or I've got like 4 rows of shotgun shells. And I just thought, like, I mean, you've done this stuff professionally before too. Like when I did that kind of stuff in uniform on the police department, I only near that, like the last maybe 2 or 3 years of my time on the road, I had one 20-round mag that I wore on the left side of my external armor carrier. But every other time when I grabbed a rifle on the armored truck, which was either an M1 carbine or a Mini 14, or on the police department, I would put a spare mag in my left back pocket, with the bullets pointing towards my butt crack, and like universally. So
makes it a beer can grab.
Correct. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
So whether I've got an AK, whether I've got any long gun, like they're all coming out the exact same way. And then I would tell people, like, describe to me one civilian involved encounter that involved more than one magazine.
Yeah, it's not out there that I'm aware of.
Not. Yeah, I mean, even that. I believe his name was Stephen Willebrand at the Sutherland Springs shooting in Texas. And he actually had to grab a mag and put rounds into it to go interdict that shooter. That was a partial mag. So, had he had a fully loaded mag, it either would have been 20 or 30. That's it. And he used what he had. So, I'm a big believer in, shot placement and accuracy, and for civilians, on the civilian side of the house, in military context, I don't know, I've heard people talk about, hit percentages and things, relative to like the conflict in Vietnam. There's 50,000 rounds fired for every Viet Cong enemy combatant that was killed. I don't know what it was in the global war on terror, but for civilians, the accountability is 100%. Like there's the only safe backstop for any projectile that you fire is that attacker that's trying to kill you, period. So the idea that you're going to let fly with a volley of 30 rounds is really careless. I mean, I'm sure that you guys have seen those things that I've posted. There's a website that I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but it's a Instagram page called Seattle Looks Like Shit.
Go for it, bro. You can say anything on this podcast.
And they post, like ring cam footage of home invasions or attempted home invasions, and people will just shoot through the door, like essentially without, it's a violation, it's a rule violation, like be sure of your target and what lies beyond it, but then also like keep your finger off the trigger until your sights are on the target and you've made the conscious decision to shoot. If you're just blasting a volley of shots out your door because someone's kicking your door in, you're not doing it right. What if you've got a kid or a roommate that like tied one on and left his key, you know, and now he's banging on the front door trying to get in. Now you end up like, you know, I mean, that's a disaster. So, you know, if people are kicking your door, you know, get away from the door, get behind some cover and let them come through. That's much more plausible defense that like you had no choice, you know, that's
and then
all
you
can
make
do.
your decision, you know, at that
Correct.
point. You got more data, you can PID who's coming through the door.
So I feel like there was a lot of stuff that, you know, and James and I used to talk about this at length, and it was almost like people thought we were crazy because we were talking about, you know, what we would now call like the civilian defender paradigm, but everybody was all military and all law enforcement, you know, like trying to shoehorn these other concepts into what would work for regular people. And it's like, dude, it's not even, you know, yes, the mechanics of shooting are the same. Absolutely. But like, that's not what we're talking about, you know? I mean, yeah, sight picture, sight alignment, trigger control, and follow through. Yes, absolutely the same. I've heard people, you know, on the military side of the house that become civilian instructors when they get out that are trying to, you know, adapt the stuff that they use in the military and in tier 1 units and stuff and say like, dude, it's the exact same, like whether you're in Fallujah or in a Walmart parking lot, like maybe that's the case, but the rules are different. You know, the rules of engagement are different and what you can and can't do are different. So if you don't pay a lot of really close attention to that, you may very well like, you know, put a 5-round non-standard response into somebody. But now you've screwed something else up along the way and you've ignored, you know, like the innocence, imminence, proportionality, avoidance, and reasonableness that Andrew Bronca talks about. And all you have to do is screw up one of those things and you don't have a valid claim of self-defense. So where the military operator doesn't have to concern themselves with that necessarily because they're trying to perform an objective, we're completely not even in the same space. You know, all we're trying to do is go home. And, you know, that's one of the things that I really enjoyed working on the armored truck. Like if I was a billionaire, you know, and I didn't have to work at all, I would probably go get a job working on an armored truck again and just not tell anybody I was a billionaire. Because I really liked it. I worked with guys that I really liked, that I hung out with, you know, like guys that I enjoyed working with, that I'm still like dear friends with, the ones that are still alive. And, you know, we would sing songs and, you know, go on these long ass trips, you know, delivering valuables all over the West Coast. And I always thought it was fun. And it's a very hyper realistic version of what regular people do. You know, we're trying to go from point A to point B and get the money to the bank or take the money from the bank to somebody else. And, you know, if someone stops you, they're stopping you with malintent. You know, it's a you know, a type of crime where they're looking to get paid usually. So the name of the game is go from point A to point B and not get killed and keep your cargo intact. So that was a really fun job for me. I thought it was a noble profession and I really had a good time doing it. And I learned a lot. So, you know, when you're going around armed in public and you have to be literally in condition yellow for the entire duration that you're on the road, you really figure out how you can automate your other systems really quickly. So I remember the day when I realized that when I wanted to draw my pistol, that like it happened so fast, I didn't realize that I had done it. You know, like I didn't have to go get a full firing grip, disengage the thumb brake, draw up to the number 2 position, you know, press out to the low ready. I didn't have to do that. Like I just went gun and it was in my hand. And I was like, what? Well, holy smokes. I mean, I think I was at that job for about 3 months when that happened. And I remember actually like just coming home that day and like telling my roommate, man, today, like, when we would stand out in front of the doors as the doors rolled up outside of banks, especially if you're in an urban area, and it was SOP to have your pistol out, and either in a stool position or down at basically like a kind of like a low ready, um, pointed basically in front of your own feet just a little bit. And I remember like, as soon as the door opened, I like, did like a low duck out and drew my pistol, and it just was like a fluid movement, and I didn't have to think it. I just did it automatically, and I was like, oh, like we're in a different space here now. So,
Well, now, Sherman, I just have to ask, because I know I've heard you talk about that story before,
mhm.
and I can't honestly remember. So I'm just gonna ask from not remembering the full story. Now, this at that point, I'm assuming you had been working dry fire and at the
Oh
range a
yeah,
lot before that point. Is I
yeah,
think what one of the points you're trying to make.
sure, yeah. It's like now, like when if I go to a range master class, or I go to, like the match that I'm doing now, the league match that I'm doing now, the division is concealed. So it's, all the other people start from essentially low ready. And Rick and I think one other guy, we start from the draw. So concealed draw. And I don't have to go, okay, like get a full firing grip, draw up to the number two position, all that, and then your hands come together and all. It's just, how it is. It's just like now it goes, and a lot of it is like really similar to jujitsu. Like when you first start doing jujitsu, and if you're doing like a Kimura from closed guard, you got to be like, okay, pivot my hip, rotate my foot, and put pressure on his shoulder blade, grab the wrist, grab your wrist, turn, and then, get in a position to where you're 90 degrees to be able to rotate. Now, as a okay blue belt, if I just go, all right, close guard, Kimura, go, like, and it just comes out of you, and it's the same kind of thing. So, um, I think that there's skill carryover between law enforcement, the military, and the civilian defender in terms of those things. But like the where the rubber really meets the road is like the mission. Like, what are we trying to do? We as civilians are just trying to go home. That's it. We're trying to go home. We're trying to keep our home secure, and we're trying to keep our people secure, whoever they are. And if you're a school teacher, when you're at work, that could be your 25 kids that are in your class. If you're a principal of a school, that could be the 500 kids that are in your school. That's who you're charged with keeping safe, unfortunately. I mean, like I wish there was and I mean, I can say this as a, I was a first responder, and I still have empathy and understanding for first responders, but we can't be everywhere, and we can't be at your emergency when you need us, and so I really believe that it's important for people to have the onus of self-defense on themselves and not subcontract that out to the government.
Yep.
As Eric, like the government sucks at most things. And it's such a big machine, and there's so many moving parts that once the government gets involved, like everything becomes a worse version of what happens
Amen.
Absolutely.
in private business, in corporations. So,
I deal
if
with it
you,
daily.
yeah, so, I like, do I want to farm out my defense to somebody who may be less or more or less qualified than I am to respond to my own emergency, you know? So hopefully not. Hopefully they, I would always like tell the guys on my department, like, I might not be like the fittest guy now. I'm almost 50 years old. Um, when I was 21, to 30, I mean, I was in, phenomenal shape. Uh, And, now it seems like I have to work really hard to just stay in okay shape. And that's just a consequence of aging. But
Yep.
I'm still doing the work and staying mobile. And I would encourage those guys to do the same thing and be the kind of first responder that they would want to show up at their own emergency. So if you're having an emergency, what does that guy look like that you want to show up and save your bacon? I want that guy to have, like Craig says, like the verbal agility skills of a stand-up comedian, the jujitsu level of a purple belt, the shooting level of a black belt, and then be able to drive like Steve McQueen.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
if that person can do all those things, and of course, like kick indoors and run through burning buildings and do all that other kind of stuff that you have to do sometimes, of course, like that's what you want. You don't want the guy who's going to be like pulls up, has to do like some weird rocking back and forth thing to like even get out of the car with the duty belt on, and is so overweight that he doesn't wear body armor, because if he did, like, it would compress his rib cage too much to the point where he wouldn't be able to breathe. Like, these are the kinds of things that you don't want. Like if you're in that position, I feel for you, but also you got to change that, because you're not doing anybody, mostly yourself, any favors at all. You're a liability and not an asset. So,
well, Sherman, to kind of drive home some of your points, and I'm sincere when I say this. I'm in the same boat. Heck, I've been off the mats for almost at a month right now. I've been able to train it hard because of my back injury. I've done what I could, in my home gym, but it's been limited. Thank God I think these injections are going to have me back to normal. I've been on the mats a little bit, doing what I can, and showing up, in class, video, so on and so forth. I know damn well I'm definitely not, I'm having to fight, always staying in shape as we get older. That's just part of it. Aaron and I just turned 50. But I will say this with an all sincerity, that if I met myself 10 years earlier, I could kick myself's ass 10 years ago and 20 years ago now. And I am honestly borrowing that from Pat McNamara. He talks about that there. Now, granted, I'd be hurting after because back 10 years ago and 20 years ago, this shit didn't put me into recovery for multiple days after a hard training session. So, but I'm go ahead.
The funny thing that you mentioned that, like, I actually just got 4 steroid shots in my heel and my ankle because I don't know if you saw, but I broke my fibula. And it was actually broken for 2 months, and I didn't know it, and I was still rolling.
Wow.
I was still hiking. The week before I went to the surgeon, I was at a dental convention in Las Vegas, and I walked about 8 miles a day through the casino, like going to and from, the hotel room to the event space and to restaurants and what have you. And so I didn't know my leg was broken, and I was still basically doing everything that I would normally do, and I was just kind of gutting through it. And it actually like ended up sidelining me for 2 more months. So it's been I think the last time I trained was like 2.5, 3 months ago. And I just did a class this last weekend, a home defense class, actually, with my jujitsu sensei. So he teaches at the range that I practice and shoot the league at. So it all worked out.
Awesome.
But he's a great guy. His name's Darby Darrow. Most of his classes that are outside of the ones at the range are by invitation only. And he's a great resource and a really great man. And I'm fortunate that I've met him at this point in my life, because I think I've told you guys this before. The academy that I belong to, that my heart will always be with them that I started at jiu-jitsu wise in Nashville, is an AOJ. It's the only AOJ affiliate in the country. So when I got my blue belt, I got my blue belt from my professor and Guy Mendez, which
Nice.
was cool. But that's AOJ is a competition school. Like Artista, where I started, is a competition, sports jiu-jitsu school. And they have a fantastic competition team, for a school that has one location at nationals, and at worlds, we're on the board. So, against like Atos and like places,
Yep.
with where there's, they maybe got 150 athletes, and we've got, a competition team of 20 people, and we're putting those kinds of numbers on the board. So that's Professor Felix Garcia and Coach Kevin Mendez. Those are my dogs. If you're out there listening, I love you guys. And
Well,
but
go ahead, buddy. I'm sorry.
but I was going to say the academy here, with it's called Rockpile Dojo. It's by invitation only, and you guys know this, like, so when you're doing competition jiu-jitsu, sometimes you get somebody down and you'll just kind of, if it's somebody like you're friends with or that you'll be like, like wham, wham, like this, like you'll act like you're giving them like power shots, forearm shots to the face. Well, in this place, you can actually do that. I mean, you don't do it full speed, but it's like
Mhm.
encouraged. So like wrist locks and stuff are all like fair game all the time. And you roll with the professor and the head coach like every class. And
Nice.
it's a long roll. It's like 7 to 8 minutes.
Nice.
And so it's different because there's no competition. They don't have a competition team. They don't do any competition. So it's like self-defense, Gracie, old school jujitsu combined with, like it's almost like the original UFC, like with Hoist Gracie type stuff where,
Nice.
yeah, you might put somebody in the guard, but we still do stuff with simulated blue guns, and then, simulated knives and edged weapons and things like that too. So, um, it's much closer to the Shivworks type material than it is to competition jujitsu. So at this point in
Nice.
my life, I'm more interested in that because you guys know that, like, if you're, what am I? I'm Masters 4, I think. You guys are too.
Master's
Or are you?
50 now, brother. Or
Oh yeah, so
Master's.
you
Yeah.
guys are
Yeah.
5. Yeah.
Yep. Hmm.
So, um,
Or Master's
so
5, exactly.
yeah,
I said
yeah.
50
It's
because
what is
age
it?
50. Yeah.
I think it's 6-year increments, right? Or is it?
Mhm.
It's either 6 or 5-year increments. But
I'm
anyway,
always confused by it, but yeah, I'm
yeah.
definitely, Aaron and I are a Master's 5 for certain
At some
now.
point, it just turns into like, what do they call it? It's like executive or some ridiculous. But like if I go heavyweight, blue belt, Masters 4, there's going to be like 3 dudes there, and all of us are going to be like either on TRT or chemically enhanced in some way, and it's just going to be like a murder fest. And so, like, you're going to go there and you're either going to be the hammer or the nail, and there's no in between. Like, those matches don't ever go back and forth. Whoever gets the first takedown is the person that's, or wins the hand fight, is the person that's going to win the match. Like, period. And while I did that a few times, and I had mixed success at it,
We all
I
have.
yeah, I mean, I learned a lot from those, but I also learned, like, probably like you guys did. I mean, I stopped judging people on their appearance, a long time ago, where I'd be like, oh, this chubby bastard, watch this. I'm going to gas this fool at no time flat. And then this dude's like doing jumping jacks on my chest. I'm like, what the hell happened? No. So, I've fought in open against a guy who's 5'6" and weighs 130 pounds. And I'm like, what are you doing down there? And the next thing I know, I'm getting upended and swept. So, it's still extremely fun and interesting and very cerebral for me, and I love it. But at this point in the game, like, I'm okay with doing the lower intensity, lower high frequency, more self defense oriented type
Yep.
stuff. So,
Absolutely.
And then just
Yeah,
having the longevity game, and not being like, I mean, like I broke toes, I broke an ankle, um, I had some injuries. I had a ruptured appendix at one point, um, and then I
Dang, man.
fought like an idiot, like literally, I think 20 days later or something in the Nashville Open. And the dude ended up like kneeling or putting knee on belly on my surgical site, and it was
ouch.
stupid. But anyway, yeah. So I'm happy with what I'm doing now, and it fits with my lifestyle good. So
Good. Sounds awesome, buddy.
yeah,
It's just one of those things, man. We just keep doing what we can. I mean,
yeah,
with the issue I'm dealing with, and Aaron had his neck surgery. The thing is that our capabilities may be slightly digressed when we're in some recovery,
yeah,
but if the balloon goes up,
sure,
we are at a level that 99% of the populace is not at. So
yeah,
that's
yeah,
the way Paul Sharp talks about it, about jujitsu and or combatives being a superpower if it's in the right context, it is true. Well,
yeah,
real quick, buddy, I think one of the things that you and I and Aaron had bounced back and forth a little bit about. So you're in Washington State,
hmm,
and the audience knows. I mean, I was in Washington State for a good portion of Aaron and I and Brian back when Brian was doing the show with us. He's still a
yeah,
partner out there. He's just not been on the show for a while. Is that Washington State? Even though King County is liberal as heck, and um, all the kind of stuff coming out of King County and Seattle. Yes, it's a blue state. It has been forever. But the Second Amendment was pretty alive there the whole time I was there,
yeah,
up until about the last couple of years. Then some, minor bills started passing through because, every town
oh
and
yeah,
Bloomberg and all that crap. They weren't getting uh, gun control passed inside, the federal Congress.
hmm,
So they started focusing a lot on states, which is
yeah,
Washington State was one of them. But
yep.
man, SHB 1240, the
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
assault weapons ban of 2023,
Mhm.
it's the worst assault weapons ban of any state, and
Well,
from
it's
what I know.
actually it's actually a carbon copy of California.
Okay, so then I stand corrected.
So it's
I
almost word for word of Cal. It's like they just copied and pasted California's. There was some other dumb caveats in there though that I haven't really bothered to like memorize the nuances of because I got in before that thing went into law, but I also um, play by the rules because I'm a good guy, and I've been more kind of like, but I'm also not one of these people that's like, I can't defend myself unless I have an AR-15. Like, I mean, okay, like if that's what you think, you're wrong. And it's like James always used to say, either let's see, let me say this right. I don't want to screw this up. I don't want to misquote him. All right, either the gun is the tool and you're the weapon, or the weapon is the gun is the weapon and you're the tool.
yeah, I have heard him say that before.
Yeah. So, like I don't care what it is. If you give me a single shot bolt action 22 and, a pocket full of shells, like I'm going to, make that thing work for me, whatever I have to do to keep everybody safe. And if it boils down to, having something as like this is a lever action. This is actually a Rossi made. It's called Levtac or Citadel Levtac, but it's essentially a Brazilian division of Taurus, I believe. But it's got a muzzle brake. It's in 357. It has a 650 lumen light. It's got a Holosun mini red dot, and it's got a 2-shot speed carrier there that you can put the round straight into the loading gate. It has a 12 3/4 inch length to pull, and it's pretty light. I mean, it's probably sub 6 pounds.
Nice.
I don't have a sling on it because I've never been a big fan of slings on lever actions, because I've always thought one of the cool things about lever actions a lot of people don't realize is they're almost as thin as your pistol. And one of the things that I've done, you can't do it here. You can't have the gun loaded here in Tennessee. You could, but you can lay it next to your in your pickup truck. Like, you can lay it on the passenger side up against the center console, and stick it down into the seat so it's wedged, and it's right there if you need it. It's short enough. It's got a 16.5-inch barrel, and it's got a short length of pull, so you can, move it from your left shoulder to shoot out your passenger side if you had to. Or of course you can, it's also small enough, a fellow my size, I can just get out of the truck and get away with it if I had to. Or, more appropriately probably is just drive away. I think that's the thing that a lot of people forget, is they go, oh man, if I was in this situation, I'd blast that dude. And I'm like, dude, even if worst case scenario, you had to run over, a gunman with your truck, it's a different kind of investigation entirely. It's a traffic fatality. It's not the same thing. It's not
an
investigation of a self-defense homicide.
We keep quoting James Yeager, but one of my favorite quotes that I use all the time is when he said, "Skinny pedal on the right."
Yeah,
there's absolute efficacy to that. If you can, just freaking drive through it. Get the hell out of Dodge. In some cases, if they're in the way, you hit that skinny pedal on the right and run over them if necessary.
Yeah. When I worked on the armored truck, there was this one route where we had to take kind of a sketchy path through a bad part of town. And there was a guy one time that, we're in a 37,000-pound armored truck that, it is completely impervious to all handgun rounds, all of them. And some rifle rounds. And this dude stepped off the corner with a pistol, like not a sub caliber, like a 380 or a 9mm or something, with the intent of hijacking an armored truck. and so I was just like, we're not stopping. Like, we're driving. And if that guy gets in front of the truck, he's going to get 37,000 pounds of squish. So, but we just kept on trucking. And what's he going to do? He's not going to shoot out the tires with a 380, 6 tires, no, that's not going to work. I mean, you've been around enough big truck tires in the military. Those things actually do okay, against pistol rounds. So,
absolutely.
They're a really thick piece of rubber. And it's pressurized, so it bounces off.
Yeah, and most of the military trucks have run flat anyway.
Yeah.
Yep, so
there's not enough credence that gets put. And I've written about that before, and 9 people read it. That the biggest skills that you're most likely to use as a civilian defender is your defensive driving skills and your medical skills. Period. And I will I'll stand on that and fight on that hill until the day I die. It's just what it is.
100%, buddy. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, real quick, back to your rifle, Sherman. So there's 2 things I was going to say about that. So of course, I've got a couple of my ARs sitting next to me. And I'll bring this up because we kind of, I posted about a new rifle that I built that's not all sexy. I got sexy guns or rifles, but I'll talk about this here in a second. It's a pretty special rifle to me. But what I was going to say on some of what you're talking about with that lever action rifle, Jeff Cooper's book, The Art of the Rifle.
Yeah.
If folks will read that, it is mainly focused around a bolt action functional fighting rifle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know,
Or the Winchester
but,
Model 94 and
yep,
3030 that he called the
there you
Brooklyn
go.
Special.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And
Yeah. So
he proposed that as being the general issue police carbine for police officers. A 5-round 3030.
yeah, and I think that the point behind that is that if folks get in an environment that it's restrictive,
Mm-hmm.
man, a rifle that you are good with, a rifle's a rifle, man. Even
Yeah.
if it is lever
Pistol
action or
caliber.
even
Yeah.
or bolt action. But that's the one thing I was going to bring up, and your case up there in Washington State is, and that's why I thought it was cool that you kind of got into get into those lever action rifles, because man, if that was what you were completely restricted to, I guarantee you could put down some dudes,
Sure.
with those rifles.
Yeah, the screwy thing about it, and I'm sure that you read this in the bill. So if you want to buy a handgun in Washington State, like if I wanted to buy a handgun today, I would have to go to the store, pick out the gun, file the 4473, and then there's a 10-day waiting period where the law enforcement agency in my jurisdiction, which is a town here, would have to. They have 10 days to basically refute, my purchase of that pistol, by running a background check and saying that I'm a prohibited person, even though I have a Washington State concealed weapons permit. Okay. So 10-day waiting period at the most. If from what I understand is if the store doesn't hear anything from the police department that time, then they can give you the gun. Okay, and that's a pistol. So 10-day waiting period for a pistol. But this lever action, like, if I go and buy this lever action today on the way home from work and I say that's the one I want, they say, okay, I do the 4473, I pay the money, and I don't get to take it home for 1 to 2 days, because that's how long it takes for the Washington State paperwork to go through. So that's crazy to me. So I did this class, like I was telling you, this last weekend, a home defense class with my jiu-jitsu sensei, Darby Darrow. And there was a woman in this class that had recently it sounded like she was sort of in the throes of a really unfortunate, like scary situation with a kind of a stalker,
Yeah.
And she made the last minute decision to take this class because she was, concerned about her personal safety. Her attorney had advised her, like, for some reason to not get a order of protection or a restraining order because they didn't want to, like, inflame this dude. And but this guy had, like, shown up at her house and stuff, right? So if it were any of us and we didn't have a gun, the first thing I would think is I need to get a gun. And so, you go get a gun, but you don't get a gun. If I'm worried that this guy's going to come to my house at 3:00 in the morning tonight, I've got no gun still until Saturday or maybe Sunday. That's screwed up, right? And so, guys and gals like us that are, prepared for that eventuality, it's a non-issue for us. It's not something that would ever affect us. Like, worst case scenario, like you've planned for that eventuality. Let's just say that. But for people that haven't, or people that are outside of that, and what really, like, hurts me and, like, upsets me as, like, both a free person and also as someone who's been in this business for almost 30 years in this life now, is that, like, the people that need it most are the people that can't get it.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
you know, if you're the person that goes, holy smokes, there's going to be, a, uh, a demonstration supporting a terrorist organization in my neighborhood, and I don't have anything to defend myself with. If my door gets kicked in or my house gets Molotov cocktailed, what am I going to throw? What am I going to do? You know, like I can go to Ace Hardware and buy a machete, and now I've got to be like, most third world countries in the world where guns aren't available, and now you know, I gotta balance my life on, the edge of a piece of sheet metal with a plastic handle. So
Well,
that's scary.
Sherman, real quick, I was
Mhm.
just going to add to something you're saying there. You know, like say for instance in Chicago, inner city New York City,
Yeah.
the people that are affected by draconian gun control are minorities more than
Yep.
anybody else.
Yep.
You know, and again, it's been proven time and time again, waiting periods do not stop anything.
Nope.
You know, because an enraged person that wants to, take out an estranged wife or boyfriend or girlfriend,
They'll do it by any
um,
means necessary.
absolutely,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. And the funny thing about the Washington State one, the justification they use for it is that it prevents suicide. But like, take a look around. This is Washington State. It's got some of the highest suicide rates in the country, and
yep,
a lot of it has to do with seasonal affective disorder. A lot of it has to do with drug use. A lot of it. I mean, look, every single guy from the grunge generation that was the front man of a Seattle
Yes.
band,
yep,
every single one is dead, and
yep,
Yes.
several of them are dead by suicide.
yep.
I think the only exception that I can think of right off the top of my head, drug overdose or suicide, um, is Mark Lanigan from the Screaming Trees. And I think that he died of, like some kind of illness, maybe even COVID. But everybody else is gone. Like Chris Cornell, drug overdose. Kurt Cobain, drugs slash shotgun blast. Lane Staley from Alice in Chains, drug overdose.
Scott
Um,
Whalen.
well, he wasn't from Seattle.
Oh, he's from yeah, he wasn't from
I think he's
Seattle,
from.
but
I think he's from California. But like, yeah,
just
he
him
was.
in that grunge
Yeah,
genre,
he was
I think is
grunge
why.
adjacent, but he wasn't, Seattle sound. So,
Yep.
but yeah, and Andrew Wood from Mother Love Bone, that ended up forming Pearl Jam and Soundgarden. So that suicide happens here independent of guns, and anybody that looks at the data would see that. There's more people killed in the United States every year with claw hammers than there are killed with rifles of all kinds combined.
Absolutely. Yep.
And there's 3 times as many people killed with unshod feet and fists. So the whole idea that this is all a gun violence problem is just a bunch of malarkey. We all know this. I'm preaching to the
Yeah.
choir,
No,
but
and I think that is the point that various statistics that you look at, especially on the lowest end. So you're more likely to be struck by lightning, to be shot with a rifle of any type.
yep,
Then you go into the subcategory of what the left calls assault weapons.
right,
It's way lower. So yes, you're bringing up a point that really just irks me,
yeah,
because the anti-gun left has become very successful of now lumping suicides into gun violence,
yeah,
and it is so disingenuous, and
yeah,
unfortunately it's helped them in a lot of this draconian type laws,
yeah.
unfortunately.
Well, here's a crazy thing, and this will illustrate the folly of all of this to you guys. Okay, so I can go to the local gun shop here, and there's a pretty good smattering of bolt action rifles along the lines of like Ruger Americans, and 300 blackout, that take Magpul 10 round AI CS pattern magazines. Sorry, those take M4 pattern magazines. Uh, and then there's 7.62 by 39 ones that take some, funky plastic banana magazine that holds 10 rounds. And then there's, Ruger Americans in 223 that'll take AR magazines. There's Mini 14s. You can buy a Mini 14 here, with a 10 round magazine, and they take the piece of wood or the piece of plastic that goes from the front of the receiver to the front of the barrel band off of the gun. And that makes it Washington state legal because it's a handguard. And I've told people before, that think that a handguard is a dangerous thing, is like the handguard protects one, only has the capability to damage one person, and that's the shooter. So like taking the handguard off of the gun, like does nothing. It literally does nothing. And, so anyway, it's just silly. The same thing goes with like, you can buy a, what do they call it? A California legal version of a Ruger PCC, with the Magpul stock, and it takes Glock magazines. So, like, what have we done? Okay, awesome. It doesn't have a threaded barrel. Thank God, because we all know that the punishing recoil from a blowback operated 9mm that weighs 7 pounds is just absolutely devastating. And
any type of screw-on device, whatever it might be, just makes it that much more lethal, right?
Yeah.
Tongue in cheek, right?
Yeah. So the whole thing is just a harebrained idea, and it just floors me, and it makes me so mad to just think that while these guys were sitting in Olympia thinking that they'd come up with the greatest gun legislation ever, they're being guarded by people with those same guns in the hall.
Well, and that is the point. This bill, of course, it exempts law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
It exempts law enforcement and military.
Yeah, and it exempts them because they're protected by that. So their protection is never going to be in question, and it's never going to be changed. And I'm sure that, like, even if they had guns that weren't on the roster or had prohibited features or something like that they got after the ban that weren't grandfathered in, they would be prosecuted for that. So luckily there's constitutional challenges to all of this stuff happening right now. There's a really great organization here called Washington Gun Law. They have a outstanding YouTube channel. It's by a practicing trial attorney named William Kirk, and I'm a big fan. I watch his videos every day and stay ahead of what's going on.
Too.
But him, the Second Amendment Foundation, and a few other organizations around the state have several constitutional challenges against both the attorney general and the governor of the state here. But, all these things are probably going to end up getting chunked together into this Ninth Circuit case, because we're also in the Ninth Circuit with Judge Benitez's decision that got bumped up to the Ninth Circuit. And that's going to, it's probably going to end up going all the way to the Supreme Court, and then there will be a final ruling, and that'll be it. So
and if we have
in the meantime,
go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just gonna say, and in the meantime, we just got to put up with all this malarkey. So.
Yeah, and brewing with the history, text, and tradition, balance is. I mean, I don't see, at least with the current makeup of the court, that Washington's and California's laws get thrown out eventually. We're definitely praying for that. I mean, what a glorious day at that point for certain,
Yeah. Well, it's and the crazy thing is it's a waiting game, right? Because you can't have things that aren't in line with the United States Constitution. You can't have unconstitutional laws. But when the Supreme Court has already said that the letter of the law and the law of the land is the Constitution, and here's the specific interpretation of it relative to the Second Amendment, and these are the rules that you have to abide by, but other places are trying to be activist judges and go contrary to that, like, who do they think they are? Like, that's the crazy thing, is how deluded do you have to be to think, I don't care what the Supreme Court said, I'm not even going to read it. And I mean, it's just, if it was any other legal precedent, or legal research, you would be laughed out of existence because it's poor research. A law clerk, the attorneys that are responsible for researching these kinds of things, it's their fiduciary duty, as officers of the court to, report and cite honestly and objectively. And when they're doing this with such a political bias, it's ridiculous. I mean, they are the kinds of people that the constitutional framers were talking about when they were
Yep.
talking about, overzealous government officials, and they're doing a real bang up job of showing that flag like loud and clear. So I'm not, I'm quite happy to like let the legal system do what it was designed to do, but it's at the same time, it's quite sad that people would go that far off of what is clearly prescribed by the Constitution and by the Supreme Court. So whatever.
Sherman, for a little while back, we did a little bit of, a summary of Article 3 of the Constitution, which is a judiciary, right?
Yep.
But one of the things that really drives me nuts about these states that pass these laws is it's not just an infringement on the Second Amendment. It's an absolute infringement of the 10th Amendment too.
Right.
And I brought my Constitution out here that sits on the desk here. And I'll just read it again here. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. And the reason I highlight nor prohibited by it, so anything prior to the 10th Amendment, the Second Amendment is codified, and by the 10th Amendment also supports the fact that the states, through using federalism, cannot also trample on the Second Amendment like Washington's doing. So it's also a 10th Amendment challenge too. And I wish that was argued a little more, but so
it'll get there. If it gets, under, there's a few, I don't even necessarily say that they're pro-gun or, they're considered to be the conservatives on the court, but they're also just like, they're very savvy attorneys. They're very good readers and interpreters of what is written and what is established. And I think that that's, when you can look at something objectively, that's your job, and I always think it's funny, when you talk about, these days, like everybody's like, we want to pack the courts, and all this kind of stuff. Like it should be 3-3-3. Like that's equal representation. Everybody should get a seat at the table. There should be the right, the left, and the middle, and that's how it should be. And so you don't want everybody with the exact same opinion because there is no more compromises. It's not real. That's a dictatorship. Like how many people do we know anybody that is like in a relationship where the couple agrees on everything? If they are, that's weird. That's like a Stepford wife kind of thing. Like who would want that? I wouldn't want that. Like, you got to have like some head button on something or another, because otherwise it's just going to be a really boring existence.
Exactly.
And so, there's got to be some derision and some divisiveness among the ranks, but more importantly, and I think that what a lot of people have lost sight of is, the word liberal got co-opted some time ago, and liberal, in the style of John Stuart Mill, is not what people call liberals these days. And so, like a liberal back in the day was considered more like a John F. Kennedy almost, where you still have to be able to question ideas, and you can't just go, oh, well, obviously this group is underrepresented or whatever. So whatever they say goes. No, if it's a horrible idea, it should still be questioned as a horrible idea. So the thing is that I feel like everybody's so polarized now. You're either this or that, and there's no middle ground anymore. And I honestly, like, I'm a kind of more of a classical liberal myself than I am. I'm certainly not a conservative. Um, the only thing I like about the conservative side really is the tax rate, um, and that's for personal reasons. But and I just can't get behind anything on the other side because it's just so alienating to everybody who doesn't just fit in one of their boxes. Like,
Well, and honestly, I don't mean to cut you off,
no,
Sherman. I think that what has become, of liberals, and they did co-opt that descriptor, because really, I call them leftists because that's really what
yep,
they are.
yeah,
And I think what's unfortunate about leftist is what is wrong with leftist philosophy is that it has to unmake the Constitution.
hmm,
They have to completely, I mean, nothing within the U.S. Constitution, for the most part, is acceptable to the left now, you
yeah,
know? And so we know we're going too far when individuals in that philosophy, they are doing their best to undo the Constitution. That's what's unfortunate. And sometimes, and yeah, we've had complaints about sometimes about us getting too political on here. But you mentioned it earlier. We're not trying to be a specific show. We like to put out information that's helpful to people in their self-preservation path, but also we're into information, and we're
yeah,
into we believe certain things because of maybe our past education and past influence and what we've seen work through the world.
yeah,
And that's why sometimes if folks kind of get irritated if we're talking about certain sides, it's unfortunate that the left is just anti-liberty. That's
yeah.
just a fact.
Well, a lot of problems get solved by thoughtful discussion. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things online, especially like amongst our group, where I feel like there could be some debate. A lot of these podcasts tend to consist of, I mean, sorry for lack of a better term, but it's kind of a tactical circle jerk.
Mhm.
Everybody just kind of stands there in a circle and goes, "Yeah, well, I did this and I did this," and somebody goes, "Man, that's a great idea," and then somebody said, "My idea is pretty similar, but it's 3% different, and here's the difference." And then everybody goes, "Oh man, that's so awesome!" And it doesn't really like push the boundaries of anything. There's nobody going like, let's play devil's advocate for a minute and think about this. There's very little of that, and I wish that there was more. But it's one of those things where it turns into uh, a lot of people that are the tough guys in the community. It's like they've never been tested before. So nobody wants to back down, and everybody wants to just flex, and it's just silly. But I'm glad that the forum exists that you all have created so that you should continue to talk about things like this, even if it seems like it's maybe it doesn't get the higher ratings, that a 90-minute thing with Tom Givens or with Daryl Bulkey's gonna get, where you're talking about like some real hardware, like high yield type stuff. I think there's this, you guys provide a valuable space for discussion and
Awesome.
a proliferation of ideas that are pushing the envelope, in a lot of ways. I mean, think about it. So if all we did was in jujitsu was like basically just do, all right, technique for 30 minutes. And then all we're going to do is spar from positional sparring using that technique that we did today. And that's it. Don't do anything outside that. So if today, if it's, X guard into, like a straight ankle lock, like that's all we're doing. If you do something outside of that, you're out of here. Go to the locker room, change out, you're done. If that's all we did, no one's ever going to push the boundaries of the art. It's going to be like train tracks. Like you're only going in one direction. You're either taking that technique and you're going in that direction, or you're not going anywhere. So, but we don't do that. We do open mat, and you can do whatever you want at open mat as long as you don't kill anybody or go out of your way to, strangle them permanently or break something. And so if you had a menu that you had to stay restricted to, it would be a really boring art. But
Yeah, you
because
wouldn't.
it's not, I can go up to you and, be like, Eric, what's up? Hey, listen, I'm really like working on my smash pass for this upcoming thing that I'm going to do. Like, can we just run some smash pass stuff? Like, and start me from a bad position where you got like me half in a triangle because I screwed up and I didn't pin one of your knees. And then you can be like, okay, cool. And then it's like a thought experiment, so then I can go, this feels right from this position. And then you can go, yeah, but like, you're not thinking about this part. And then you go, oh, shoot. And then I say, oh, dang it. Like, you're right. And so you're tightening up your game by basically doing like a physical debate. And so this is no different. We're tightening up our mental game and how we think philosophically about things by talking through these problems, which is why, like, Tom Given says, if you want to get really good at something, go teach it. Like he tells people all the time, you don't want to be a firearms instructor? I don't care. Like, come take the class and it will make you a better shooter because you'll understand why you're doing the things that you're doing and why if you don't if you try and do things that are outside of this and they don't basically like fall into a logical pattern of thought, then you're going to have a lot of problems. And so when you do these kinds of things, you're literally like having a moving, meditation conversation that allows you to become more proficient with and understanding of the material. So, it's like when I was in philosophy training at Gonzaga, for my philosophy degree, you couldn't just read a book and then go, okay, Aaron, you good? Eric, you good? All right. You guys, for tonight, read chapters 4, 5, and 6, and I'll nod at you again tomorrow. Like, no. Like, everybody reads the stuff so that you've got, like, the basis of what we're talking about, and then we talk about what we read, and then we can extrapolate that and, tie it into, this tells you when I was in school, but, man, everybody at Gonzaga was talking about The Matrix, the Matrix films, because that was like such a cultural phenomenon at the time, and how it related to, everything from Christianity all the way down to utilitarianism and control, So
dystopian.
Yeah. So you can do a lot with that. So I said all that to say that I think that although it might not bring in the big ratings, I think that the shows where you do talk about ideas in a broader scope are just as important to changing the landscape and moving along the thought process so this doesn't just turn into a masturbatory fantasy of gun dudes,
Yeah, and we're absolutely okay with having the current listenership, and we got a decent listenership. I wish we could match the audio listeners. Audience probably tired of hearing this. I wish we could match our listenership downloads with our viewership on the video platforms. But again, this long form folks just aren't as interested on YouTube with watching an hour and a half interview, but we're also okay with that. Now, again, we talk about this all the time, and just recently is we're absolutely dedicated to doing a lot more short content.
Yeah.
And I've been playing around with some softwares that are going to make that easier for us, that just breaking up, our videos. That's going to be a lot more than me just having to edit it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, guys like the Sean Ryan podcast, I watch that guy, and I like how, you can watch his whole 3 hour and 52-minute interview with, some stud from, the Battle of the Black Sea. Or you can watch this 17-minute basically highlight section of some story that he told in that 3 hour and 52-minute. I think that's good. And because there's times where, like I sit down and I'm like, I love Sean Ryan, but I'm not feeling like 3 hours and 52 minutes today. I've got 35 minutes of time and attention right now before I fold up this recliner and go to bed. And, and that's what I'm looking for, So I think that like the short format thing is good. I think that the podcast thing, a 3 hour and 52-minute audio podcast is great because, for me, like that would last me like a week of commuting, 30 minutes there, 30 minutes back. Like that's a 4-day work week for me. So I think that's the sweet spot.
Well, what I will say is that is why we do have a lot greater listenership on downloads, because people, commute a lot and whatnot. But I will tell you this, brother. This is going to be about the end of the show for me. Unfortunately, I've got to get up early.
Oh yeah,
and it's 23:06 here.
Uh-oh.
So we're still going to talk more
postpone music now. So let's start with music next time.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to.
I guess I never really realized, like, when I hear the intro and the outro to your show, that I always kind of, I envision in my head, like Aaron going like, okay, ready. And then he, hits play, and then it's wow, 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 and some face melter. And then, the lyrics come in, and then it like fades out. And then you're like, thanks for listening to EvoSec. And then the same thing with the outro. But I guess it's not really like that in real life, right? So
no, this is a little bit of the movie magic right here.
Yeah. So what I would tell you,
I told you though, when I saw you at TACCon, like, it's been about the last 10 months or so where you guys have had like a longer music intro and outro, right?
Yeah.
And I told you that like you had a couple like real face melters in there that were like super, that made me like think Avenged Sevenfold like right off, and I dig it. So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, we love music. Clearly, you see my drums, Aaron's guitars. We absolutely love music. It's part of who we are.
We need to have more musicians on. It's been pretty cool. We've only had a couple of musicians on, but they've literally been some of our favorite musicians our whole lives. So that's been a lot of fun. We need to find somebody else, Eric. I've been thinking about that. So
I mean, like, I'm not a professional musician, but I was a saxophonist all through middle school, junior high, and high school. And then I did live in Nashville and do karaoke on a pretty regular basis. So,
awesome.
If you don't know anything about Nashville, if you try and do karaoke in Nashville and you suck, you get gong showed for real. And if you do it in the wrong bar, you get bounced. So, if you can't, hold a note or carry a tune, you're going to have some problems. So, but I, try not to do country music if I don't have to.
Well, I'll say this and we can get off here, but here's the key thing. I have been getting paid to play music for about 30 years.
Yeah.
But my absolute favorite thing is to plug into this amp over here and play by myself.
Yeah.
So I don't care if someone's a professional. It's an aspect of my music.
Yeah.
But playing music is what is important to me. So we have a lot to talk about there, man. I wish we had more time right now, but this is getting to the end. But Sherman, we will have you back really soon. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, let's just do a quick turnaround. Maybe
here in a
of
couple
weeks.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, we can do it the week after Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
that works for me.
Cool.
Well, hey, you guys, have a good evening, and it's awesome seeing you again, Sherman. That lecture I got to see at TACCOM was awesome.
Thank you.
And we need to talk about that next time.
Sure.
So, will you guys have a good evening? I'm signing out. Take it easy.
All right. Thanks,
Take care, gentlemen. Rock and roll.